Diplomats and business leaders pledge billions of euros to help rebuild Ukraine at an international conference in London. Search teams trying to find a missing submersible in which 5 people were hoping to see the Titanic say they've heard banging sounds.
Climate activists in Paris have transformed the Eiffel Tower into a wind turbine ahead of a financial summit aimed at fighting the climate crisis.
Thousands descend on the ancient site of Stonehenge to mark the summer solstice.
When you hear any of these
London, 1940.
the government have given instructions for the following
Kyiv,
important announcements.
2022.
As we've seen in Bakhmut and Mariupol, what Russia cannot take, it will seek to destroy. They want to do the same to Ukraine's economy. And the scale of the challenge is real. The war brought a 29% fall in Ukraine's GDP last year.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Ukraine has activated all the power of solidarity for which the EU was conceived. And Ukraine is also activating the moral force of NATO. This is important for all of us.
In just over a year, Ukrainians have cleared rubble from 2,000 kilometers of roads, rebuilt over 40 bridges, renewed 900 train stations and depots. And all of this while fighting a war for their own survival. Slava Ukraine.
Rescue teams searching for a missing submersible which was taking 5 people down to the wreck of the Titanic say they've detected underwater noises. US Coast Guard officials have relocated the search efforts after hearing the sounds described as banging. Search teams are racing against the clock to locate the sub, which vanished in the North Atlantic on Sunday as air supplies are used up.
On behalf of all the men and women of the United States Coast Guard and our search partners, we offer our most heartfelt thoughts and prayers for the 5 crew members, their families, and their loved ones.
The search for the vessel, named Titan, is very complex and is covering a wide and deep expanse of ocean, and it's unclear what's caused both of its communication systems to stop functioning. Meanwhile, an underwater robot is searching in the vicinity of the Titanic as salvage equipment is being rushed to the scene in case the sub is found. The destruction of the Kakhovka hydroelectric dam has caused an estimated 1.2 billion euros of damage. The amount is vast, but for locals living in flooded settlements in the Kherson region, that damage is all too evident in their daily struggles. The waters have receded, but help is still needed, and a clean-up seems a long way off.
Мы сейчас еще в состоянии ходить, вот без преувеличения, вот такой слой ила. Ну вот я сейчас нанял квартиру выше, ну чтобы людей не обременять. Я из своей великой пенсии.
Volunteers from all over the country are helping people from the flooded settlements. They carry humanitarian aid, including clothes, food, soap, washing powders and other cleaning and hygiene items. Evacuations are continuing for those who just can't see a normal life resuming anytime soon. For Ukraine's farmers, there is an added dangerous consequence of the dam burst. Landmines laid by occupying Russian troops have been moved around by the floodwaters. Farmers had, until now, managed to clear swathes of agricultural land. Now they're using drones to spray and remove vegetation for the rogue mines to be visible for removing.
Вони сорняки, що мін тут не було видно. І вони протягом, скільки тут, 2 кілометри? Протягом 2 кілометрів поле заміноване повністю.
The other problem facing farmers is how to irrigate their crops. Without the Kakhovka Dam, the irrigation machines and the supply canals are left dry. One farmer said it could take 10 years to rebuild and refill the vital reservoir.
Farmland was set ablaze near the West Bank town of Huwara, with Palestinian residents claiming that around 100 Jewish settlers had started the fire. Other settler attacks were reported on Tuesday evening in the same region. It was apparently a repeat of the sequence of events that followed a Palestinian attack in February that claimed the lives of 2 Israelis in the area. Earlier, mourners had gathered in central Israel to attend the funeral of a 21-year-old killed in a shooting by a suspected Palestinian gunman. The young man and 3 others were killed by an attacker who opened fire at a petrol station near an Israeli settlement in the West Bank. The attack underscores the fragility of the situation in the West Bank, where on Monday an Israeli military raid into the northern Jenin refugee camp ignited some of the fiercest Israeli-Palestinian fighting in years. The surge in violence has killed more than 130 Palestinians and 25 people on the Israeli side so far. Activists have transformed the Eiffel Tower into an apparent wind turbine to send a message to leaders ahead of a summit on helping developing nations meet the financial challenges of climate change. Debt restructuring is among the proposals on the agenda, but campaigners are wary of false promises.
We have seen leaders promising how they are going to work with the developing nations, how they are going to reform the finances to take funds to the developing nations. All this is false promises that these leaders are very clear that they are not willing to help the developing nations, but rather blindfold them with fake development through that investment.
Some 50 heads of state and government will join the summit in Paris on Thursday. They'll be discussing reforming the world's development banks in the context of a warming planet. A tit-for-tat blockade is operating at the Kosovo border with Serbia. Last week, Pristina announced it was blocking lorries with Serbian license plates from entering Kosovo over what it described as the false arrest of 3 Kosovan police officers by the Serbian authorities. The incident exacerbated tension in the region. Now, lorry drivers trying to leave Kosovo are being blocked in retaliation by fellow disgruntled drivers. Patience is running out on both sides. Finland's new government, led by Conservative Prime Minister Petteri Orpo, has been formally sworn in. Orpo will now lead a 4-party coalition, including the far-right Finns party, which it says is planning a major crackdown on immigration. Orpo won elections in April and has been in thorny negotiations to build a coalition since then. He takes over from outgoing Sanna Marin, whose Social Democrats finished 3rd in the election.
The European Commission says it's time to protect the EU's critical infrastructure and industries at the same time as reducing its dependency on what it calls foreign actors. Without directly naming China, the European Economic Security Strategy, as it's known, details plans for Brussels to intervene more in how EU companies invest and trade in critical sectors.
In economic security, we're looking at a limited, small set of cutting-edge technologies. And here we want to make sure that they do not enhance the military capacities of some countries of concern. That is basically the philosophy behind it.
The European Commission proposes strengthening its control in 3 areas: inbound investment screening for critical companies, outbound investment screening for advanced technologies, and export controls for critical technologies. Experts say that the risk emerging now is that companies may be putting European know-how and security at risk by moving too much technological innovation to countries like China. Under the new law, Brussels would be able to raise the red flag on investments that it considers as too risky.
I think not really protectionist. I think it's realistic. It's realistic of how China and America define their strategic technologies, where they want to lead and they want to dominate certain technology supply chains. And if that happens, if we run into monopoly positions in certain technologies, if Europe is being kicked out of some of these technology supply chains, I think there's a real security risk that we have to address also through these security tools.
Currently, it's national governments that decide on export controls. But the proposal is already dividing member states, with some cautious about going too far on what was always seen as free trade and a decision made by themselves, not the EU. The plans will be discussed by European leaders at next week's summit in Brussels.
Celebrating a unique once-a-year experience, a disparate gathering of revellers came together at Stonehenge in southern England to mark the summer solstice, the longest day in the Northern Hemisphere. Druids, hippies and the simply curious sang, danced and chanted as the sun rose over the ancient stones, looming over Salisbury Plain. The World Heritage Site was open to the public from Tuesday evening until Wednesday morning, the one night of the year where people are allowed to stay for an extended period inside the stone circle.